Hello, we're on the final episode that I'm hoping of this book, and I have some more Hello Kitty books that I managed to get hold of to read you a bedtime story. So hopefully we'll finish this off, and please ignore my hair because it's been raining and I've been outside and it's decided to go into a puffball. So this is the Hello Kitty and Friends, the final part, I'm hoping, of this book. This is book number 10 in the series. I'm aware that the highest number I have is 19 or 18. So, yeah. So, I'll just take the bookmark out. Put that over there. So, this is chapter 5 of 6, The Big Race. The next morning, Hello Kitty woke up early. Did she dare look out and see what the weather was like? Was it raining? She opened one eye a little and then the other. She could just see the first few rays of sun sneaking their way through, and she's on a cute little bed with the blinds open. And I'll let you see the pictures as well. The crack in her curtains. Hooray, it was going to be a lovely day. Hello Kitty rushed down the stairs and into the kitchen. Minnie was already there, munching her way through a bowl of cereal, while Mama White prepared the picnic for the whole family's lunch. Hello Kitty was so excited that she wasn't very hungry, but Mama asked her to sit down and eat something after all. She would need lots of energy for her cheerleading routines. And there's like a lovely picture on that side. Papa came into the kitchen then to collect the picnic and load up the car. Hello Kitty finished her breakfast and ran to grab the pom-poms. She mustn't forget those. Soon they were all packed up and on their way. The park was a hive of activity as Papa drove up. A group of people were already making out the cross-country race with cones and ribbons, while another group laid out a table of silver cups as prizes. There was a row of bunting to mark the start and the finish of the race. Some teachers were calling out instructions over a handheld loudspeaker. A long queue of runners were already standing in front of a table to collect numbers to put on their backs, so everyone would know who was who while they were running. Hello Kitty looked across the field. Lots of families had to come to watch. There was dear Daniel with his mother and father, Fifi with her parents and little brother sister. Tammy was with her twin brother Timmy and their parents. Everyone was laying out their picnic rugs and choosing their spots for the day. Some in the shade, some in the sun. Hello Kitty had agreed to meet the rest of the cheerleaders under the big oak, close to the start, to have one last run through of their routines. She ran over with the pom-poms. Everyone had already come changed into their costumes. It was still a little squelchy underfoot from the rain the day before, but the sun was already starting to dry out the muddy puddles, and none of the cheerleaders let the wet grass worry them. Hello Kitty led the first cheer. Give me an R, give me an U, give me an N. Run, run, run. What have we got? What do you do? All of the cheerleaders cried out in unison. Fifi looked over from where she was standing with the other runners, all trying to get the best position at the starting line and grind. Hello Kitty and the rest of the cheerleaders hurried over to a point at the end of the first stretch, of course, there where they would perform the first part of their routine. 1, 2, 3, bang, the starting gun went and the runners set off. It was a good start for both Fifi and dear Daniel. They were in the middle of the pack. The cheerleaders started singing and springing. Hello Kitty popped down into a bend and back up to a high V before jumping into a star. She looked around her. Everyone was keeping in perfect time. She glanced at the runners. Dear Daniel and Fifi were both still around the middle of the pack, but they had crept up to the front a bit. The first runners headed into the trees. Hello Kitty realised the cheerleading team should move so that they would be near the end of the race to cheer people over the finish line. She called to everyone to gather up their stuff and make their way over to the other side of the park. They quickly got into position and waited for the runners to come out of the trees, and soon here they were. Hello Kitty gave everyone the signal for them to start up again. As they started their next routine, she saw Fifi at the front of the pack. Hooray! But where was dear Daniel? Hello Kitty felt a rush of relief as she saw him sprinting out of the trees. The runners were travelling fast now, all closing in on each other, but dear Daniel was quick. He was coming up the outside, slowly taking on each of the other runners. One by one, now he was in 5th place, now in 4th. Hello Kitty cheered. Come on, dear Daniel. What happened next took Hello Kitty completely by surprise. It seemed to happen in slow motion, like watching it in a movie. Before Hello Kitty could call his name again, dear Daniel had slipped in a puddle. The others were all running so fast that they were past him in a flash. Hello Kitty's heart was in her mouth. Would dear Daniel get up and run again? She looked at the cheerleaders. It was almost time for her to lead them out into the V for their grand finale. But what about dear Daniel? He was slowly getting up to his feet. He looked very unhappy. Hello Kitty felt a lump rising in her throat. Dear Daniel was one of her oldest friends. She had to go over to him, calling out to Tammy, and without a second thought, Hello Kitty left the cheerleaders and rushed across the park to help. Dear Daniel stumbled to his feet just as Hello Kitty got there. She saw the disappointment on his face as he stood up, but he tried to smile. When he saw her, he told Hello Kitty he wanted to finish the race. Of course he did, Hello Kitty declared, and she would run beside him every step of the way. Dear Daniel's knees were all muddy and bruised, but he started to run with Hello Kitty at his side. Step by step, they headed towards the finish line. They weren't quite at the back of the race, as the last few runners were still on their way behind them. Hello Kitty glanced over to the cheerleaders and was really pleased to see that Tammy had taken charge and was leading them out into the big V for the end of their routine. She wasn't able to lead her team in the finale cheer, but she knew that helping dear Daniel was far more important. They were just 50 metres left to go of the race. Hello Kitty and dear Daniel made a last dash together, and that was it. They were over the finish line. Dear Daniel's parents hurried over to check he was alright, followed by Fifi, and then Tammy came running over with the other cheerleaders too. They all said how brave he was to finish the race. Dear Daniel smiled and remarked that he would never have finished the race without Hello Kitty's help. She was such a good friend, Hello Kitty blushed. She had been glad to help, even though it had meant leaving the cheerleading team. The Friendship Club all hugged, and Fifi announced that Hello Kitty had made her think of a new rule for the Friendship Club. It should be a good friend is always there to help when you fall. Hello Kitty beamed. There was only one word for that rule: super. Final chapter. Chapter 6. Perfect prizes. The Friendship Club set about enjoying the rest of the day. The teachers and parents had set up lots of other stalls like a lucky dip, apple bobbin, a cake store, and a bouncy castle. As the four friends walked around the park, eating ice creams, laughing with each other, they couldn't have been any happier. When it came to the mum and dad race, they all lined up to watch. Mama White, much to everyone's surprise, won the mum's race, whilst Tammy and Timmy's dad took first place in the dance. Papa White was right towards the back, but he didn't mind running. Running really wasn't his thing. Hello Kitty grinned at him and giggled. She had a cheerleading costume she could lend him if he wanted. She called out. Everyone laughed. All too soon, the events of the day were over and it was time for the prize giving. They all gathered around the table where Miss Brown stood in front of the array of shiny cups. Waiting to present the prizes. The results of the main event, the cross country race, were announced in reverse order. A boy called Jack had come in third and went up to collect his yellow rosette. Fifi was over the moon to collect her bright blue second place rosette, and a boy and a girl from another class had come to join in first. It had been too close to split them. Then happily held up the cup between them, each one holding the silver arms. Miss Brown made a special mention of dear Daniel and explained how that if he hadn't slipped he would have been up there with them too. Everyone gave a loud cheer. Then Tammy and Timmy's dad was called up to collect his cup for the dad's race, and Mama White went up to collect her first prize too. There was just one cup left standing on the table, but who was that for? The prize for all of the events had been handed out already. Hadn't they? Miss Brown cleared her throat. This silver cup was a particularly special one, she explained, because it wasn't for a person who had run the fastest or longest. It wasn't even for a person who had worked the hardest. This was a very important cup indeed. As it was for the person who was the best sport, she was proud to announce that the person who had the best sport of the day by putting her friends above herself, and that person was Hello Kitty. For a moment, Hello Kitty couldn't believe it. She didn't move, but then her friends pushed her forward. Dear Daniel whispered to her that he had told Miss Brown she had given up her role at the front of the cheerleading team to help him. As she held the trophy above her head and everyone clapped and cheered, Hello Kitty felt very proud. She looked across at the family and friends to where dear Daniel stood with Tammy, Fifi, and then over to where her sister Minnie was standing with Mama and Papa, and smiled her biggest smile she could. She didn't think she could ever have felt happier. Hooray. The end. So in the back it just says about activities and stuff and the next adventure. So thank you so much for watching. Any support would be very appreciated. And yeah, that was our first proper bedtime story.